So here we are. As you can tell, I've done quite a lot already on our wonderful Captain Hook. I've done his eyes. One of the things I've noticed is when I do a page, usually the eyes and usually the skin, the face, is one of the first things I like to complete because it just kind of brings it to life. Now, it's been a little bit unnerving because he actually, I feel like he's been staring at me this whole time. But today what I wanted to do was show you how I started, well, his hair, so to speak. But we're going to do it up here with the feathers as well, because I'm going to do the feathers black. And so this is a good way to start. So one of the things I would want is I want very, very shiny hair and the feathers to be shiny. And so I wanted to pick a gray. And so I have to get this out once again, as I was saying. And one of the best grays for this is this 2110, which I am not sure. I think I know the name, but I'm not going to trust myself. So the name is Paynes Gray. 2110 is a fantastic silvery blue gray. Does that make sense? So if I want silver, blues, and whites to be the highlights in that really dark hair of his, this is a good gray to start with. And then I also do like to use, was it 2030? Now my pencils up here, I just went ahead and put them in order based on number. So 2200 is going to be the black. So we have the black, we have the Paynes Gray. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking there's one that seems to have eluded me. Where is it at? Here's the 2030, which is the Chinese ink. So, which seems to be even darker than this black. So the ink black and the Chinese ink seems to be darker in there. Again, if I didn't have my my swatches, I really don't know how I could possibly do this. So the first thing I'll tell you that I discovered with my Derwent Inktense is that, and we're going to, sorry, oops, there it goes. We're going to start with the Paynes Gray. One of the first things I noticed was the barrel size is larger than my Prismas. It's larger than my Faber Castell. I mean, any other pen and our pencil, and bigger than any of my pens as well. And my hand actually does fatigue when I'm using these after a point. The other thing I noticed, which is great, is I've been using these a lot and I've hardly had to sharpen them. They put down a lot of color and you don't have to sharpen them as much. And they're also saving on the amount that I use on my Faber Castells and my Prismas when I've used them with Prismas, but not in this book. It's only Faber Castells. So just to show you, all I'm doing is putting that first little, I'm kind of doing just lines. So this is the lightest gray color. And I'm just going to put it in some different places here. And I just kind of, I don't really color all the way in. So I am mimicking what I did down here for his hair. So even all this hair you see here started out like this. And I'm just literally putting down just a little bit of color here and there. So very, very light amounts of the gray. And sometimes, I'll do the little circles that I like to do. But mainly understand that these are going to be, oh, and I just saw where there's probably some red peeking through right there. You know, sometimes you're going along and you realize there's a space that you missed, huh? So I'm just putting down some color, and then I will use my Chinese, and I'm actually probably going to put in some blue as well. And so I will go back to look at my blues. Now these are my turquoise, so I need these set. And probably one of the best blues I've been using for highlights or just a little bit of blue, dash of blue, is this 0900, which 0900, I think it's still over here. All right, 0900 is iris blue. So that's 0900 iris blue. And I like it because you can see there's some hint of blue coming out here. So when we see really dark brown hair, or black hair, I should say, a lot of times when that sun hits it, either you see almost a purple hue or a blue hue that's going on when the light hits it, when it's really, really shiny. And that's what I'm kind of going for, is extremely shiny. And I want these, you know, black ostrich feathers or whatever they are to really have some of that shine as well. But I need to be careful because I don't want anything to be too dark starting with. So starting before I get in there with my layers. You know me and my layers. So we're just going to kind of put some highlights in here and mix it up a little bit, because when I go to activate it, you'll see that it kind of, for lack of a better word, it gets muddled together. You know, you're going to get some mixture of those. Now, this is my Chinese ink. This is my darkest one. I'm going to go ahead and put it down some of these middles. I'm not too worried about making this really, really dark. That's not what I'm trying to do at this point. Most of the dark you see here is done with my Faber Castells and layering, and then also I came in with a Micron pen to do some of these really dark, because the biggest thing I've noticed with my Prismas and with my with my Faber Castells, I don't seem to be able to get them as dark as I really would like them to be. They, you know, it just, I always want it a little bit darker, it seems, than what they're willing to give me. So, and I am just going in here, and you can see it's a pretty messy little coloring job, but this is what I like. So this whole area is already done as far as with coloring and with my Derwent Inktense. All I need to do now is go through and activate it so that it turns into this. So I am going to go get my water and my handy dandy paintbrush, and I will be right back. Okay, so I've got all my stuff. I've got my handy dandy cheapo favorite paintbrush here. I got my water, and all I have to do is put this in, get it wet, and then I always dry it off. Now the thing with this is that it has a great, very I don't know, a fantastic point that if I twist this as I'm drying it, it really gets that little tiny point. I'm going to bring it up and hopefully this will focus. Let's see if it will. Looks like it is. So you can see that point is really fantastic. But let me tell you, this brush is one that I got in a very, very cheap set. I believe it was from Michael's. And I'm going to be very sad because I doubt if I'll be able to get it again. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a number. It doesn't have any way other than it's my blue one. It's actually, it does have a number. I see it says Craft Smart 4. But I really, really like this brush. It gets into great detail. So one of the things is, if you look here, make sure you can see me. So right here, this is a pretty small detail. And with these ink tints, what happens is once you start activating them, you need to push them down into the point of, in this case, a feather, but I don't want it to bleed into the red. Now, the good thing with Inktense is that when you come back in and you've let this, so the red I did yesterday, and the red is all permanent now, and it's permanent ink, so it's not like watercolor where I could even accidentally start it up again by hitting water on it. But it does mean that my blues and purple, or blues and grays that I've used here, can very easily move into those colors. And it's not a huge problem, but I really want to keep it all crisp and clean and make it really look separate. So I don't want it muddled. I don't want them mixing in this case. But this little brush with its point, oh, I love it. It is really fantastic for getting in there and getting small, tiny details. And I can hold it very relaxed. And so that is one reason why I actually even though my hands can get fatigued if I use just the Inktense for a long time, I always break it up by then coming in and actually activating. I always do my colors separate, so my red I did and then let it dry. And then now I'm doing this. I will not work on this section until probably tomorrow or a couple days from now, just because I want to make sure that all of it is absolutely dry. Let me zoom in just a little bit so you can see. So you can see a little better as it activates. But the other, so I want it all to dry and I want it to be set. I want all the ink to be set with this. So yeah, using the brush and see how that just kind of changes it. And that will help me get different kind of colors in my highlights. The other thing about the Inktense that I like is, unlike a lot of my watercolors, it's not adding tons of tooth to the paper. There is a minor amount, but you really can't, because it is ink, and if you get it all dissolved, you really can't feel it that much. And so I like that, because my Faber-Castells or even my Prismas don't get eaten up as much when I go to use them. So by that I mean, when I use my Faber-Castells on here, I'm not using as much of the pigment from the wax from the pencils. It's not grabbing as much. So sometimes when I use my watercolors, you know, it really can eat through my Prismas, particularly because of how soft they are. But and it doesn't change the tooth of the paper as well, and you're definitely not pushing so hard that you're burnishing, so you don't have any of that. But again, I'm using this really as a base coat. So these are the colors I want to kind of peek out from underneath the subsequent layers that I'm going to be putting on it. And there is a lot of layers. A lot. Just about finishing up here. Now notice I sometimes even in between colors will come back out and wipe it on my little towel here. This is just a Kleenex. I like using Kleenexes. They seem to absorb the water a little bit better. They're very soft on my brush and really help me get, you know, that fine point, so I really like them as well. So there is what the Inktense does for that particular feather, and that is what I've done here, basically using the same colors with a couple different strokes here and there, and it is what I've done underneath his hair all over here. Now I still have a little space here to finish up for his beard, and then of course I have his hair back here, but I want the feathers to be just as black as his hair. And I've also used a similar color combination over here, move that in, of his hook. So for now though, what I want to do was start the process for you to be able to see what I'm doing here with his hair. And with that, I'm going to have to pause again, and I need to get my Faber-Castell. So no more of the Inktense for today. I will go up and do those feathers there and the feathers over here, but now we're going to focus on the hair. So again, what I did here, up here, what you just saw me do, is exactly what I did down here for the hair. So this gets us to the same part. Let me go ahead and bring you out again. There we go. So now I'm going to introduce is my Faber-Castell. Now the first pencils I ever bought were these, and it was this set. It was 36 colored pencils. Tons of people have done reviews on them, so I'm definitely not going to do that. I will be honest, I started using them, everything was going fine, and then I got my Polychromos Pigma Premiers, and I just fell in love with them. Number one, I could afford a lot more colors and more variations, and they went down so easily. I do believe that you need to spend time with any one of the pencils that you buy, and by time I'm talking, you know, for the the last year. Well, I've been coloring for just a little bit more than a year now, and for a huge portion of that, probably maybe 10 months, 9 or 10 months of it, was only with Pigma. And what it did is it's really let me get to know my pencils. So I now, because I got the Inktense and then I knew I still had these, I was like, you know what, I need to start working with these again. And so I've used them on their own in one of the books that I showed in a previous video, and really loved how they went down. And then I've been using them here in combination with my Inktense. I've also been then going in for the detail work and adding all the dimension with my Faber Castell. Now, again, they're 36, so there's my lovely 36 set. But I did buy some additional ones, and I keep them over here, and I keep them all together. Some additional colors that aren't in here. I went to Dick Blick or whatever and just got them in open stock. And that was because I wanted some more, and I thought that's how I would grow my Faber Castells. But I haven't really touched them in almost 10 months, and now I'm starting to use them again, and I do want to use them throughout this book because it's really going to help me learn how to use these, learn how to blend them, really learn what those colors are, what they look like, and what they look like when you put them together. So, you know, going out and buying a lot of different pencils of any kind of set, whether you're doing the Pigma Premier, whether you are doing the you know, the Scholars, or even if it's your Crayola ones, you know, take some time to get to know them and blend them. Don't jump. And then I do believe that different paper, therefore different coloring books, are more conducive to different pencils. I am picking that up as well. So let's get started, right? So by opening this up on my 36 plus my extra, the first thing that I want to do is get set up to start putting in a little bit more of the shading. And let me go ahead and bring you in just a hair. Whoop. Yeah, still. There we go. Bring in just a hair. Ha ha ha. I'm hilarious because we're doing hair. And I'm going to start with just the gray. And I actually, well, first what I'm going to do is go in with some of the black just to give some more shadow for me to really start looking where some of these darker spots. Now, as we always know, it's dark where it's coming out of places. And I'm just going to put, now, because it's hair, look at the strokes I'm doing. I am actually doing hairy strokes. I'm actually doing strokes. I'm not doing my ovals like I've done in other incidences because I want a striped and I want to build this up. So I'm very cautious. Right here I would think there's some dark, or it's dark. And again, I'm trying to get to this extreme dark from this side, so it does take a little while. One thing I will warn you is while I was doing this, eventually I build up quite to, I mean, it ends up with a lot of buildup on this. And I did a boo-boo, a big boo-boo, and I'm a little disappointed. I didn't realize, and part of it is because, again, here I'm doing it again, I don't have anything behind my page. But something that happened, and I don't know if I can get this where you could actually see it, but there is, I pressed too hard with some of my pencils in the layering process, and it hasn't come through, but it's actually dented this side, so it's raised and it's very bumpy. So guess what? when I go in to color her hair, I've got all these bumps. And I'm hoping I can do something about it. I'm hoping I can, her hair won't look like it's got some type of weird mange going on or something when or the poor cloud over here. But I pressed too hard, so I didn't burnish it necessarily on that side, but I burnished it through the back. And I don't know if having anything in the back here would have helped. I probably have, no, there's nothing on that page at least. So, be aware of when you're pushing hard, and I was pushing really hard with some of my blue, I think it was. And then even with some of these other colors I'm doing here, with the black. And I didn't need to go that hard. So I need to back off and make sure I do this a little bit more, a little bit lighter in touch, because I really don't want to mess that up. Doing this, I'm looking back at it, and this part right now, if I wanted to do gray hair for him, this actually would be a pretty good color combination for gray hair. But I'm not making him old. But if he basically was George Washington or Benjamin Franklin, this would be great color hair for that kind of that gray. But just remember, it's one of a bazillion layers that I probably will be doing just because that's what I do. But and I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I don't do it for the sake of it. It's just what I have found, because I start so light to get to what I'm envisioning in my head. A lot of times it just ends up taking that many. And I'm not as good with these Faber Castell Polychromos as I am with my Pigma Premiers. And so this book is trying to really help me get lots of practice and start becoming a little bit better with these. Now, I have seen some beautiful work done. In fact, one recently on a Facebook page, I think it's Laura's Facebook page, somebody actually posted something that was done with just 36 Crayolas. And it was really beautiful, some beautiful blending, and it just looked fantastic. So, in the future, that might be a fun thing, because 36, when I was younger, I loved getting that crayon set. I hated 8. 8 was awful. But 36. 24, I remember the first time I ever got a 24, I thought I was in heaven, and then I got 36. Beyond that, once it got up to the, I don't even know where it went from there, maybe 64 or whatever, other than, getting that free Crayola sharpener in the back of the box, I didn't see a whole lot of benefit, because by that time I was already starting to use my other colors to blend. And so but I loved the 36. Yep, loved the 36. Oh, and recently I was at an art store. I thought this is ridiculous. But I was at this art store, and they had the 24 set, and I think it's the 24 is they've retired one of the colors. I think it's Dandelion that they've retired, which is really sad because I love that color. And I love that name too. They've retired it, but it was still in the box, and there was like 4 boxes left. And literally, you don't know how hard it was for me to walk out of that store and not buy them so that I could still have a dandelion color. I just really like I need crayons. I've got plenty. Though I wouldn't mind trying to do a challenge for myself of using crayons and see if the techniques and things that I've learned using the pencils would be of benefit. or could I use them for anything else? Could I use them as well, or could I use those techniques using the crayons? I don't know, maybe that'll be something I'll do some point. So much to color, so little time. All right, so that was just putting in a lot of the darker shades and really getting more movement, kind of highlighting some of the curls and the movement. Beautiful hair he has. And that was just using the black, the 9201-199. So now what I'm going to do is I want to go in, and this is the one that I use a little too heavy-handed, so I better be careful. And that is going to be my Indigo, dark Indigo. Now this one I love for even darkening black. It really works well, and it's the 9201-157. Now I actually probably need to sharpen it, but I'm going to try it and see if I can get some good little striations. And really that's just going in, and some of these darker spots, the parts that I know I really want dark, I'm going to hit with this Indigo. Again, if you were trying to do more of a dirty gray or a salt and pepper gray, this Indigo is a great color for that. You know, because again, we don't really have black in nature. We don't really have white. They're different colors at different portions, and so there is a bit of a blue look, but I do need to be careful that I don't push as hard as I did the last time I used my Indigo. Done with this, I mean, for you to know that, you know, we went from this light gray like this up here to this, you're like, why did you even bother with the light? But you've got to understand, with the layers, it's all about these that are peeking out, these lighter colors that are peeking out. I can't really go back and add those later and get a depth of color. So you'll see I basically do end up coloring over whatever I've put down as the base. But here's the difference. I don't have to use near as much of my pencil to do that. If I was trying to cover up white and trying to get this dark enough for the white, I would be using a lot of my, you know, fairly expensive pencils. My Faber Castells, or really, you know, also even my Pigma. So this does actually end up saving a lot of wear on my regular pencils when I use my Inktense. It also gives such a great base because, again, I'm not combating with white. You know, I'm not trying to get the white out of there. Instead, there's a light gray that's peeking through, and that is what you're seeing, all these highlights. So you kind of have to do it upside down. I don't put in my highlights last. I'm actually putting them in as we speak. You know, as I'm leaving spaces that are empty, or I'm just eluding. And even the putting in of some dark colors actually highlights even more. You know, you need that contrast. So right here, you know, I need this to be pretty dark down here by the time I get done, because that's where the hair is folding over itself. And then some of these spaces that have kind of a big wide swath, I'm actually putting in the hair. You can see the lines that I'm doing. So though it looks like I'm covering up everything, why did you even bother with the Inktense? It's giving it that base color that isn't white, but it's light enough that it's going to come through and have some shine, as you can start seeing develop on here. So the next color that I like to come in with is going to be just a it's this gray, and this one is just a warm gray, 9201-274, and I like to bring it in again to bring in that extra layer can just kind of focus in there. And then kind of hint with it with some of the other gray. So it's kind of, the light gray gets a little bit of it. Even down the middle of some of these whites, you don't want them to be, you know, there's some still dimension. It's not just a solid light color. You know, you're going to have that odd dark hair every once in a while. It also gives movement. It continues to show the swirl of the hair, because hair, we know, hair is made up of a bazillion tiny, tiny, thin follicles that are, and it's not just all one color. Now, I don't even know if I'm putting it in the right place. For some reason, I try to think of hair and its movement and how it works, and then I go with that. I don't know if where I've chosen the darks to be, if that's really where it would be dark. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not thinking of a light source at this point, just because this is kind of like just a flat picture. I know a lot of other people are great at that. I'm not somebody to follow for light source at this point. I think that's a talent, or a skill, I should say, not a talent, a skill that I may develop as I continue doing this. But light sources and making sure everything's getting hit, sometimes I just look at it and go, does that look right? But I'm not the one to be taking any guidance for which way my light sources are coming onto my pictures. And again, you know, I've never been trained. I'm just sharing how I do it, because a lot of times if I post a picture, I get questions, and I think this is how we all learn from one another. There's probably 1,000 different ways to do this, and easier ways to do it. All right, so right there, you can see this is very close to this. Whoop, no, you can't, because I'm completely off camera. So let's move this over. Let me bring him out a little bit. Okay, so this little part right here, I've not done with my going over with the darker black pen. And that's what I was saying, I think earlier, is what I have found is the actual black of the Faber-Castell or the Prismacolor just never seems to be dark enough for me. So this right here is basically the Faber-Castell black, and you can see how it's not as dark as here. I just want that to be darker, more intense. And I really wanted it for his hair and beard, because I always think of Captain Hook having all these luscious curls. Yes, I'm probably basing it off of Dustin Hoffman, but having luscious curls. I kind of have gotten into Charles II era. They're over in England, reading a lot about that, and then Louis XIV, and I've been watching some programs, and they all have beautiful hair, which question is, would they really have that back in those old days? But their wigs at least were gorgeous, and in the shows they always are. So that's what we're kind of, but he's not wearing a wig. We know this is truly him, right? You know, so I wanted that darker. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go get my Micron and show you how I add that in. So probably one of the hardest things for me is keep going, and really try to push it over the top. I usually kind of wimp out. And I was scared I was going to do this in this picture, so I really pushed myself to do this with this black pen. I'm not a big one about liking to go in and use a bunch of different mediums, but this one we're going to talk about, there's 3 mediums used. So here we have the activated Derwent Inktense, and then we've used our Faber-Castell for all of the adding the depth and all of that. And now we're going to come in with this, let's see, it's a Micron. This is an 01 in size, and it's just a Pigma Micron, and it could probably be any size you want. The 01 has been working, and I like the stroke that it leaves. So let's go ahead and zoom in and see if I can See, we're going to start down here because this is where I left off. So again, all I'm doing is doing light flicks of the pen to build up. You can see how long. Now this is where I have to be careful and go very light on it too, so that I'm not pushing through to the other side. Because, whoops, I did that. Yeah, I pushed to the other side. It didn't go all the way. It didn't like pierce through, and the ink didn't go through, but it's made an embossment on the other side. And my poor lady over here, oh, sorry, that's Queen Amidala. Jeez, what's she doing in there? She's not in Peter Pan. But I made bumps on poor little, I think it's Wendy's hair over here on the other page I was telling you about earlier. Well, I need to get her in there. Well, okay, you can't see her, but there's bumps there. So I need to be very light-handed. So let's get back to what I was doing. Sorry, a little bit of a rabbit hole there. And I'm really trying to follow what the artist has already given me. The illustrator has already given me, so I can kind of see the flow. But I'm using the strokes. Now where it joins between two, that's almost a solid black, and then it needs to fade out. Alright, and there seems to be a little bit of a bump here. And it goes down and that gets dark again. So again, very light, and I'm trying to do it with flicks of the pen to get those almost like individual hairs drawn in there. Now you can do this with just about any pen. The thing I would say is if you can get it with a fairly fine tip, you do want it to not move. You probably could do this with a gel pen if you're better at gel pens than I am, which is probably just about everyone. I am not very good at gel pens. What happens is I glop everywhere, and that's what the only thing I'd be worried about as your hand goes across. This dries fairly quickly. It is permanent. It's even archival safe, that type of thing. These are made, I think a lot of people sketch with these. I actually bought them and have been using them in my Fobonichi planner that I do, and you know, it's kind of like a bullet journal type thing. But I was really happy to see how they worked here, because it really gives a sense of having hair strands. And being an 01, in this case, really being so thin, I'm less likely to cover up all of the light color that I want to shine through, because that is the hair, the shine of the hair. So I think that's fading in pretty well with the rest of it. Now we just have his patch of gray hair. Now granted, it is further back, so the idea might be that it would be a little bit lighter, but I want this to be the main focus. I mean, this hair ends up being the main focus of this picture. Because, I mean, not even his hook. His hook is pictured in other places. So here we're going to start again. Now, right here, if you look right in there, let me see if I can flatten that down a little bit more. So that right there looks really white, and it's actually not. It's a gray, but it's that light gray. And with the other coloring that we've done, it gives it an illusion that it's a shine. So again, you know, I'm kind of doing this backwards. You work on the shine first, and then you come in and use your darker colors. That I don't have what I'm doing in the frame for you to be able to see. I do, I want to caution you to not do too heavy of a hand. You don't have to get the hair and all the little dark hairs perfect the first, right as you're going through it. In fact, you want to do it very kind of lightly, get your bearings, and then see where the picture takes you. A lot of this, I went back in and said, okay, there's something about that that's not right. And then I would add either more black, or I would even go back in with my other colors and kind of smooth it out. But if I put too much down, then I'm kind of stuck with it like that. And so what I'm finding, or the first thing is, when I do this the first time, it's not perfect. It's, you know, I will come back again and again. Things that I want to do is I want to add up all the minutes for each episode, because I do fast forward through some bits. I put some music in because I'm not always chatting, and it's more about just kind of, for me, my videos for me are about showing you how I'm doing something, because it is a lot easier to show a lot of times than it is to try to explain it. And just show you how you can use different, your different tools, or the things that you have, the materials. And also, I don't do a lot of mixed media until something like this, actually, I guess is technically a mixed media. But I try to also make it where if you just had Pigma premieres, you could do this as well, you know, just to keep showing you the colors. Now, that is probably the biggest thing. I've watched so many other videos, and I love so many of these ladies out here and see what they do, and gentlemen, and see all the talent that is out there and the ideas, because then I like trying to use it in different formats. And that's always when you can take something like this hair color and transport it onto something else, a different picture. You know, that's when you're really starting to show that you understand how you want it to look, and you understand how to create it, and it doesn't have to be in the exact same book, because, you know, we don't have all the exact. And I know when I first started coming out and looking for coloring videos, I was looking for exact because I had no idea. And I wanted to be inspired, and I wanted to try new things. And I have to be honest, even when I went looking for this, there is another, somewhere on Instagram, there's another picture, and very similar in the colors that I saw. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. And then I just was like, how am I going to do it myself? And it wasn't a video, it was just a picture. And that's what, you know, go out, get inspired, go look for other pictures of Captain Hook, and they can be everything from the movie version. You know, I think he would be so wonderful in full purple, or a full, almost velvety green jacket. And I kind of wish I had done that, because I just think that it would be so beautiful to do. But there's another part of me that I love red, and so this has been fun working on that. And I've not had a chance to do a lot of red. I do so much green with all my nature, you know, my flowers and things, that sometimes I just want to break out the red. Or purple seems to be another color that, when given a chance, I like to bring out purple. He would look fabulous in purple. He'd look very regal in purple. But I did go ahead with the red because, like I said, I don't feel like I get to do a lot of red. But one of the things is knowing how much time this does take. I do, you know, we see this so many times people may or may not understand. And part of coloring for me is that I can take my time with it, and it is a place in my life that I let myself slow down and enjoy each and every stroke that I do. It does mean I don't get as many done. Since starting with the Derwents, I've noticed I am getting quicker things done, and that's because that base coat is so easy to get on, and the colors and the shading, that it goes much quicker than if I did it myself, creating that background. And that's something with him right now. I'm having a hard time. I don't know what I'm going to do with this guy's background. I haven't decided yet. Going on to this last one here, so I'm going to be finishing up filming this section. I'm not sure that this is the end of the hair, but for today I think this is where I'm going to stop, and then if I pick up again, which I will, if I do any additions with the hair, I'll make sure and let you know, because we will be also working on the feathers up here, which are going to be very similar to the hair in the process. That's why I wanted to show you how I did the Inktense just as the base for them, and then kind of going with the process. And that's more what I'm trying to show is a process, and hopefully getting to the end of the picture, but not every single thing about the picture. I didn't show you how I did the eyes and stuff. We'll save that for another day or another picture. But it's just, and I still have to figure out what I'm going to do. Right now he's very pale. He's obviously not a very good captain. He stays below all the time instead of being out on deck with his crew, because my Captain Hook really could use a little bit of bronzer, or a tanning bed or something. So hopefully you can see where this really kind of transformed. And even looking over here, I'm already going, okay, there's a few other areas I want to go in that I want to kind of, tease out a little bit. I keep using all these hair terms. It's so hilarious. Tease out a bit with his hair. But in general, I'm pretty happy with how that's looked. So we will be doing something similar, like I said, up here. These are going to be very black, but I need those highlights so you can see that movement. If I just color this all black, you wouldn't really see the movement that you're seeing here in the hair. So let me go ahead and bring it out. This is where we're going to stop for today. Thanks so much for being here and for all your support and all the lovely comments. If there's anything that I've left out, please let me know regarding his hair. And so the next time that you come in, I'll probably either be finishing up with the feathers and kind of showing you that process, or possibly the next one will be actually working more on the red hat and the red in the coat. So as I always say, thanks so much, and keep coloring those pages.